Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. I certainly find myself in very good spirits indeed, because the other day I had the great honor and pleasure of talking with a wonderful person. His name is Pynn. Now, the conversation that we had was a conversation / interview. So I asked him a number of questions, and he was very gracious in his responses. And he was so insightful and wonderful, as many of you know already, because he has this fantastic YouTube channel, one of the very best out there. His taste and range in cinema appreciation is, in many aspects, quite unparalleled. So I am a huge fan of his. I have been for a long time. So I was so excited to get the opportunity to speak with the one, the only Mr. Pynn. So here is that conversation. Now, before we get into the conversation proper, let me just say from the outset that, as always, there are some technical situations that arise. This was a Zoom meeting conversations, so I did my best to control all the technical aspects, but as always there are some moments where my failings are apparent on that front, so I apologize in advance. That's all on me. That's not on Aaron at all. That's all on me, so I apologize in advance for that. Also, please note that there are some, I would say, very mild spoilerish type of talk, but nothing major in terms of really giant things. But they're kind of mild spoilerish types of conversations that we had with regard to, off the top of my head, with regard to films like Black Christmas, with regard to films like Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, with regard to films like Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, and Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. So I will leave information in the description box below, just in case you want to be careful with that stuff. However, I will say also that it is of the mild territory, so so I would just, but they are about specific aspects of the films, so specific scenes in particular. And so if you don't want to listen to that, I will just leave the information in the description box below, and so you can try to avoid that as best as possible. So just you rely on those timestamps that I will always leave behind, and I will indicate spoilers where I think it's appropriate. But if you're okay with that discussion, please listen in, because this aspect of the discussion was really a lot of fun. It was fascinating to hear his comments, Aaron's comments on, for instance, Black Christmas. A wonderful conversation that he had there. And then we talked about a number of different things. There were so many other things that I wanted to speak to him about, and so hopefully we can have another conversation with him very soon. So this is a conversation interview with Mr. Pynn. Now, all the information about his YouTube channel, about his Patreon, because he does have a Patreon, is going to be down in the description box below. So please do me a huge favor. I would really consider this a great favor if you could, if you haven't already, if you could go to Pynn's YouTube channel and subscribe to his channel, and click the notification icon, the bell icon, and visit his videos and comment. He has live streams which are also uploaded on his his channel, so you can check those out, or you can attend the live streams. He is a wonderful, gracious gentleman who leads conversations so skillfully, and he's very welcoming and such a warm human being. So he will, if you go to his live chats in the live streams, he always is very gracious. So I just encourage you, please go to his channel and subscribe to Aaron Pynn's YouTube channel. Also, if you're interested, he has a Patreon, and Patreon is very important to help support those YouTube personalities and people that we like. So his Patreon link will be in the description box below as well. So if you can, please support his channel in any way that you can. Subscribe, of course, and then Patreon as well. So without further ado, let us enter the conversation with Mr. Aaron Pynn. Thank you.
Okay. And recording. Great. So, greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I am so happy today because I have at last been able to bring as a guest on this channel the one, the only, the legend that is Mr. Aaron Pynn. And for those of you who are YouTube video watchers and who are fans of cinema and cinema collecting, and also great film discussions with people who know their stuff, Aaron Pynn's YouTube channel is one of the premier places to go. I love it. It's a great kind of sanctuary for film lovers, and leading the way, as always, is the brilliant, insightful, and ever so enthusiastic, charismatic, expert par excellence in all things cinema and beyond. And so that is the great YouTube channel of Aaron Pynn, and it is named after the one and the only Aaron Pynn. So without further ado, let us welcome Aaron. So Aaron, welcome.
Hey there. I don't know if I can live up to that opening, but I'll do my best.
Oh, you've already done so. You've already done so, and then some. So, but thank you very much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm sorry it took so long. It's been like forever. I've been between work and things have been nuts, but I've been trying to get back to you for a while now.
And you're very busy too on the cinema discussion front as well. Not only do you have your own YouTube channel, which you are incredibly active about, and I'll try to talk to you about that during the course of today's discussion, but also you are guests. You are guest on a lot of other channels and podcasts and things of that nature. Could you just tell us a little bit about your kind of your film discussion schedule? What is your typical film discussion week or month look like?
It's nuts. I mean, I would like to say I would love to say I had like a set schedule, but a lot of times it comes down to basically inspiration or like what's coming out, because I talk a lot about collecting and I talk a lot about like different companies. So if there's especially if there's like a company that's going to have like a sale coming up, or there's like there's some big news that's going to be coming out in the industry, then I kind of talk about that. Like I'm a big proponent of like companies that do stuff. I know you're a big Criterion fan. Like I love Criterion. I'm a big fan of like companies like Vinegar Syndrome and Severin that do movies that a lot of people don't normally like associate as, okay, this is cinema. And I think you can learn something from every film that you watch, like no matter what it is. Like there's stuff to be learned. Every movie that you turn on can be a filmmaking experience in a box. It can be a class if you take it that way. And for years, I guess that's how I've taken it. But for like schedule wise, I don't like have like a set schedule. I try to do things on like Fridays and Saturdays. People like weekends. They like Wednesdays when it comes to that. But we just do a bit of everything, and usually it's a lot of live stuff. And lately, I've had to do I've done more podcasts. I've been lucky. I've been blessed to be able to be on podcasts of people that I'm fans of and that I've listened to, like ahead of time. So that's been really nice. That's been humbling, actually, to be completely honest with you.
It's fantastic, because I think one of the great things about you is something that you've just expressed right now, which is something that I believe in wholeheartedly. That is, I think there is room for any kind of film to be a learning experience, however one wants to interpret that phrase. And it can be a learning experience in terms of entertainment, or maybe in terms of one's own life impact, or it could be something in between. It could be something major, it could be something minor. And I really believe that. And I am a fan of Criterion, that's for sure, but I am also a big fan of other films that are not necessarily in the Criterion collection. And I can't claim to have the same level of expertise that you have, but I think uh, just based off of what I've come to know about you, I think there's a lot of overlap between the kinds of things that you like and the kinds of things that I like, which is one of the reasons why I'm really attracted to your channel and your other guest appearances, podcast work, etc. It's really a phenomenal. You're doing such an amazing job on your channel. It's one of the best out there, my friend. Truly is.
Thank you. It is. I mean, like around 2 years ago, I've been doing the channel now for 8 years. I think going on 9 years now. But it was just pretty much like pre-tape stuff, and I literally started on an iPhone 4. Just right there saying, okay, I'm going to make something because I initially didn't like YouTube. It didn't come in early, but I was looking for information on a film. That it was around Halloween time, actually. No surprise, because I'm like the horror stuff. And I was looking everywhere to find a review on a box set. It was nowhere. So finally I went to YouTube. That was my last ditch resort. I Googled it, and they said, okay, somebody was doing an unboxing. And I said, well, that's kind of fun. I said, if like one or two people or my family see it, it's kind of neat, and I can kind of like sort of document down the road. Like, if my kids are in the background too, I got my kids like throughout the years. So that's kind of how it started for me. But never realized it would go this far. Around 2 years ago, I decided to go live. I came down here in my movie library, and I'm like, okay, just for fun, let's do a live unboxing. Let's just check my internet, see how it works. And it went really well. And as you probably know, I did want to go into acting when I was younger. That was my thing. So there was something, and wouldn't never wanted to be like a TV actor or like a movie actor. I wanted to be stage. I wanted to do stage. When I went live, I kind of got that feeling of like that live feeling that you get of being on stage, and two, I love going into to stores like Blockbuster and places like that, and just talking to people about movies. I'd always like start up conversations. My better half would joke about the fact that we'd go into rent a movie and I'd be there for 3 hours. And so this is kind of what I wanted to do with the channel, was to kind of like the stores were gone now, was kind of replicate that.
That is very interesting. You because you do a lot of live streams. I think right now it's exclusively live streams, right? On your
Pretty
YouTube
much. I'm
channel.
going to be
Yeah.
doing some pre-tape like reviews of like certain films, but aside from that, mostly live streams.
May I ask, do you how do you feel? How do you prepare for that? Is it do you find that you have a lot of need for preparation beforehand, or is it just a kind of like a jazz improv type of feeling? You're just ready to go and you do it and you see where it takes you.
It's a bit of both. I mean, like on my streams, you've been there, so you know that it can take me pretty much anywhere depending on like where the conversation goes. But you try to steer it as best you can, but you really can't. You really just got to go in there and just be prepared for anything, because you never know what kind of curveball is going to come up. But preparation is still there. And like, if I'm going to go on and I'm going to be talking about like certain films, I've had to like watch the films obviously, and kind of like study them, because I'll get asked all kinds of questions about about a film. It could be just like, it could be an actor's name. I'll get things wrong like every time, and that's the good thing, is I got people on there that are fantastic viewers and support, and they just if I mess something up, they'll know, they'll call me out on it, which I love actually.
you have a really wonderful fan community. They love you. They really love you, and it's really marvelous to see. And it's great to see your interaction with the people there. I marvel at it, actually. I've done live streams myself, and I can attest to the fact that it's a lot of fun on the one hand, but after it's over, I always feel so depleted of energy. I'm very exhausted. It's usually late at night, and maybe that has something to do with it. But I have I don't have the stamina for it, which is why I'm always so impressed with the kinds of things that you're able to do on your channel. It's amazing, and the way that you cater to everyone and you address everyone, it's really fantastic. I'm just I'm honored to be able to sort of look in and be a kind of participant in the chat sometimes, and just watch how uh, you work your magic. It's amazing.
It's the sad thing is that, like, for some of the film community, we get a lot of negativity and a lot of toxicity now. So that's the one thing that I wanted to make sure wasn't wasn't part of the channel.
Yeah,
So I wanted to just be kind of like a safe space where people could, like, just sit down and talk film,
yeah.
just relax, and, like, no matter what is going on else outside, this was just like an area where they can just come and say, okay, I can just talk about, like, the stuff that I love. And film is definitely what I love. Like, when I grew up like pre VHS days, when I was, like, really young. So I started collecting books first, and comics, so, which was a kind of a very visual medium. But I would, like, get every movie book that I could, and it was harder to see the movies except for late night, like CBC back then, which was a Canadian channel. So basically, I'd get these, like, books on movies, and I'd see these stills of these Hammer films and these Universal films, and I'd have, like, the story in my head of what was going to be, and then I'd get, like, magazines like Famous Monsters, and I want to see all these films. And finally, like, VHS came around. Well, finally CED came first, but then VHS came shortly after. Um, and I just started to, like, engulf it, like, get everything that I could. It was we're lucky enough we had, like, a VCR in the house, and I would rent all the time. So my first movie stuff came from books, actually, as opposed to the films. My love of movies came from books and reading about the films, from anything from, like, Hitchcock and Truffaut to, like, just regular movie books to books on, like, vampires and cinema. And when I finally got to watch the movies, it was this, like, this world opening up to me that I didn't realize was going to be there. And then I saw 1974's Black Christmas with Bob Clark, and I started to notice things that I didn't notice before when I was watching films as a kid. I started to notice, how did they do the camera shot? Um, how did they edit that? There's a sequence in the film, and it's going to seem kind of morose, but it is kind of beautiful too. And when Margot Kidder's character is killed, and there's this, like, this glass unicorn, you remember? And so when it's being done, there's this, like, these kids that are, like, caroling outside, and it kind of juxtaposes the two scenes together, and it's both like haunting and beautiful at the same time. And I think it was that exact moment that I knew, okay, it's got me hooked, and it's got me hooked for good.
That is amazing. That is an amazing moment. And I'm so glad you mentioned Black Christmas. That is also one that affected me very much when I was a kid. The Margot Kidder moment that you mentioned, yes, and the way that the lighting and the violence is portrayed as well. It's done. There's just enough shown, but then there's enough that's not shown. You know what I mean? So there's
Yeah.
enough of a balance there, which I think adds to the horrific effect of that moment. And this is really fascinating. I want to ask you about this, about how you first got into films via books, and you read about them and you saw the stills. I have this experience myself as a kid growing up, because of the, at the time, lack of availability of a lot of the films that I was reading. But I must ask you then, based on how I had a certain similar feeling, could you tell us an example of, say, a film that you read about a lot, and that in reading about it a lot, it really built up in your imagination? And then when you saw the film, it was like, wow, this is an amazing experience. So like when you first read about it in a book or stills, and then when you saw the film, it actually matched or lived up to your expectations. Could you give us some examples of
Yeah, it's gonna
films
seem
that
kind of
were
like
like that?
cheesy, but Hammer's Dracula Prince of Darkness. I'd seen like the movie, like stills in the book, and they'd show like Christopher Lee and Christopher Lee stuntman, and they're pretty popular pictures now. And he's on the ice, and then they show the thing where he's going down on the ice, and he's holding his hand up. And for years, like, man, what is that like? What's that going to be like? And they show like a picture of Andrew Keir there in the back with the rifle. And I was like, I want to see that movie. I want to know exactly what's going on and how we got to this point. And my dad is a huge cinema fan, so he's like major. So a bit of it comes from there too. So I grew up like hearing about all these movies from my dad. Like he'd say, I went to the theater. The Hammer movies were my favorite to watch. And so finally, when I got to see it, and I remember when I got to own it, like that was even more when I got to own Dracula Prince of Darkness. Anchor Bay started this like Hammer collection on VHS. He had these like clamshell cases, and you'd open them up and you'd take the slip, and there'd be writing on the inside, which I adored. It was amazing. So when I finally got Dracula Prince of Darkness, I actually remember going to the store, and because movies like physical media was a huge deal, so you'd have to stand in line. You get there because the Anchor Bay stuff would go right away. So I stood in line with my like copy of that like black clamshelled case of Dracula Prince of Darkness. So excited to get it and bring it back to my house.
That is amazing. Yes, I think for a lot of people, myself included, when Anchor Bay, when they emerged on the scene, and they were doing the stuff that they were doing at first, right in the VHS days, right? It was amazing stuff. And it was right. It's amazing to think back then and think about now and think of all these great labels, right? But yeah, Anchor Bay was doing some fantastic stuff early on. Yeah. Um, that's amazing.
They were
That's
like
really, and
jealous of it. It seems like we're more lusted with it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, and then you mentioned in your comments earlier about how you then VHS emerged on the scene, and you started to consume all the VHS stuff that you could find. Could you give us some examples of some of those early staple films during this VHS era that were really effective and really had an impact upon you?
Well, when I was a kid, like a lot of the early stuff was like definitely a lot of the regular kind of like teen stuff that you would imagine. But after a while, you just wanted to see pretty much everything. So film noir was something that like kind of caught me early on, and I was a big like reader, so I read a lot of Agatha Christie, and I loved slasher films because slasher films, especially the ones with the mystery, reminded me kind of like those the and then there was none type of thing. Um, so that was kind of like the big thing for me was film noir and slasher were like right at the gate. Now I had a theater that was close by, and they didn't show a lot of the new films. Like every once in a while, I would get E.T. or Conan the Barbarian, something like that. But mostly, what they would show would be a lot of the older stuff. So they'd show a lot of Giallo. So I got to see a lot of Argento in the theater. I got to see a lot of like the early Jackie Chan stuff before Rumble in the Bronx, kind of like like the ones that he did like Drunken Master and stuff like that, the earlier stuff. When he wasn't a name, I guess. But that's I'd go to the cinema and I watched that, and you give a poster. I remember going to see Deep Red in theater, which because I'm a huge Argento fan. His birthday was actually just a couple of days ago, and they used to give posters out. So I had this poster of like Deep Red, but I couldn't put it up in my room right away because there's a sequence in the film, and I'm sure you've seen it, with the doll, right? And that doll still freaks me out to this very day. When that scene comes on, I tense up. I'm like, oh, the doll's coming. I know the scene's coming up. And I remember once I got this, like, it was a cheap box at the time. I had this, like, cut version of Deep Red on it. And I put it on. And for some reason, the Deep Red music, the soundtrack, with, you know, that little blah kind of la la type thing at the beginning of it. That was the menu music. So I'd been at work and I put it on, I was going to watch it. And I fell asleep. I had the worst freaking nightmares that you can imagine. And I wake up and I like this music is playing in the background on a loop. And I'm like, that's why. That's exactly why. So yeah, I remember not to leave the menu going afterwards.
Ah, that's amazing. That is really amazing. Oh, I'm a huge Argento fan, but I'm so jealous that you were able to see many of his films in the theater, and then of course followed up on VHS. So yeah, so it would be Deep Red, right? Sometimes it would be called the Hatchet Murders.
Yeah, the
And
Fonderosa is the original title.
yeah, yeah, and it would be the cut version, right? And you'd have all the little like the comic bits with Daria Nicolodi kind of truncated or cut out. But yeah, uh, could you tell me? And now that we're on Argento, could you tell me what was it like when you first saw the long version of that film?
That was amazing. I mean, like I love Deep Red anyway. I got to say, even the shorter truncated version isn't too bad.
Yeah.
But my favorite when it came to Argento will always be Tenebrae. Tenebrae is always the one that stands out to me. And because when you look at Argento and you look at his films over the years, there's like you see the man growing as an artist. So when you're watching early in his films, and I've said this on my channel a couple times actually, he's like the protagonist is pretty much him. It's the guy, he's walking in the street, he sees something, but he's not quite sure what he sees, and that a big murder mystery comes up. By the time Tenebrae came about, it's the artist and it's the writer, and his violent books are very controversial. And all of a sudden, is he the victim or or not? And then when he had kids, then you'll notice that his movies all of a sudden have a female protagonist, and often they look like his daughter Asia Argento, like Jennifer Connelly in Phenomenon. I Argento is just one of those that like really stuck with me. The first time I got to see fully got to see Deep Red, because a lot of them were cut here. Tenebrae was Unsane here, that was cut too, and it was thanks again to Anchor Bay. I'll give them like total credit because they put out the Argento collection. Now, even before that though, I had to go. There's a company called Video Search Miami, and they're not around now, but they're back in the VHS days when you could not get movies like they were not available. You'd spend $25 and you'd get like a VHS. It'd have like a greenish blue case with the title and a description on the back of it. And sometimes like the sources would be not the greatest, but it was just to see the film in its uncut format. And I remember having like a whole like shelf of those.
Wow, that's amazing. Yes, I could never, for the life of me, track down an uncut version of Tenebrae, and so it'd always be Unsane, and even that was really hard to get
Yeah.
for me. Even the cut version, that and Inferno was really tough to find. The ones that were easier to find for me were like Phenomena and Deep Red, but the Hatchet Murders and Suspiria. And then later, I think during the VHS days, I remember I had a horror film rental, and you know how they had the trailers, maybe sometimes at the beginning and sometimes at the end, and I saw the trailer for Opera, and it was called Terror at the Opera,
Oh, I
and
love that.
my mind just exploded. You know, whatever, however old I was, just in the '80s, it was amazing, and I couldn't wait for it. And it was just, and it lived up to my expectations and then some. So it was really fantastic. So, what are some other Argento films? While we're on the topic, what are some other Argento films that really mean a lot to you? You've mentioned, of course, Deep Red, and you've mentioned Tenebrae, of course. What are there any others that you can mention for us here as well?
Definitely. I mean, like the original Bird Crystal Plumage, very, very good film. Uh, for a different reason, like Four Flies on Grey Velvet was always really hard to find. You couldn't find it on VHS, couldn't find it on DVD. finally Shameless put it out on Blu-ray. And so I grabbed that right away. So just the fact that, and I love Mimsy Farmer. She's so good in everything that she does. And she's especially good in this film. Some people aren't really into that one, but I do. I love Four Flies and Gravy. But Terror at the Opera is the one that made me find Video Search Miami because I wanted to see an uncut Terror at the Opera. And like in the trailer, when they show the needles under the eyes, you got to see that. And Sergio Stavletti did the effects work for that one, and Stendhal too. Stendhal syndrome is another one that it can be a little bit like disturbing for some people. It's got some pretty disturbing sequences, but it has some beautiful scenes in it as well. When she's going to the painting, but you can see Stavletti's work. He would later go on to direct Wax Mask after Lucio Fulci passed away. But you remember the scene in opera where I think it's Darren Nicolodi's character is looking through the peephole? Yeah. That was after him and her and Argento were long past being divorced. So,
yeah. There's been a lot that's been said about that very famous scene, both on screen and behind the camera. Yeah, it's wow. What an amazing artist he is. My goodness. And then you mentioned also that you really liked. You liked film noir, and you were also a fan of Agatha Christie, and how you liked films that had a mystery element to it. Before I go on to some other questions, I must ask you also. I am also a huge Agatha Christie fan. I love I've read everything that I can get my hands on multiple times. So I'm a big fan of the adaptations as well. I'm particularly looking forward to the Kino Lorber releases of some of the on-screen adaptations of her works, like Death on the Nile and Evil Under the Sun, which I think have been released September 1st, but they're still en route here as we speak. So hopefully they'll arrive soon. But you mentioned film noir, and also I want to touch on film as well. But before I do, I must ask you also, which is about acting. And you said you obviously have a background in acting in the theater. Could I ask you what are some of the what kind of acting were you studying, and what were some of the works and maybe plays or other types of theater media or thespians that you were particularly into or are particularly into in terms of the perspective from an actor's point of view?
Well, when I was growing up, I was in like a small area. So most of the stuff that I did around that time was like I did like a lot of like, school stuff and like kind of like community work. Anytime I take a class on like any movement or I'm a horrible singer, just and singing, because when I was really young, I stuttered a lot. I was really bad. I could barely speak. So a teacher like kind of like took me on as a project. Really, she was a really sweet girl, and got me into like speaking in front of the class. So what she would do is every Friday, I would read a couple pages of Washington Irving's Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And from there, I liked being in front of the class. So I was in, I was in a school Christmas play. We did like the Christmas pageants in school. And I was chosen as a reindeer. I was Comet the reindeer. And he had no lines. And I was a ham even back then. So I wanted lines. So basically my whole scene was like Santa would come on, somebody dressed as Santa would come on, and all the reindeers would be called out one by one. And so I can't remember what I said, but I thought of a line for Comet. So when I'm brought out, I just say the Comet line. It was something kind of funny and cheesy, and I ran by, and the teacher's like, "That's really good. Can you write lines for all the reindeers?" And then I'm like, I'm not the special reindeer, but I did. I wrote lines for all the reindeers. So from there, I actually started to write as well. So I ended up like throughout the years, some years I couldn't like perform in plays. So what I would do, because I would go visit my parents, because I lived with my grandparents growing up. So often I'd direct the play instead. So I'd go behind and I'd be the person that would direct it rather than the person that would be on the stage. And that was really fun. That was really rewarding. Um, I'd often like if it was like nowadays, you could just have your phone and have somebody like film it for you. Um, but I always wondered like afterwards, like, oh, and how did it go? Like, how did the play go? Because I wasn't there to see it at, when it finally went on. For like as for like actors or people that stood out to me, a lot of character actors. Like I was big on character actors, people that I knew would love theater. And I'll give you like a modern day actor now too. There's an actor that is probably famous for like a lot of younger viewers as the Flash. He's Grant Gustin. Now, Gustin is a guy that 100% is a stage actor. Like he's a guy that's like Flash is going to be over and this guy's going to go to Broadway. That's what he wants. That's what he's going to do. That's his thing. And I was the same when I did not care. I love movies to watch and to study. I didn't want to act in them. It was too fragmented for me. There was no. It wasn't. I like the aspect of like I like the interaction with the audience. I love the way that felt. And when I was growing up, there was the guys like Donald Pleasance and Dwight Fry, and Peter Lorre. Not the leads, but the ones that kind of stole the show, that kind of stood out for me. And often you'd find it that that a lot of them, guys like Vincent Price, would have extensive stage backgrounds. And I really found that like I'm a proponent for stage acting. I think that's the hardest acting you can do, because on a camera you can edit it and you can film it with a certain light and you can there's retakes. When you're on stage, it's real and it's there. There's no re-editing it. There's no, if you don't connect with the audience, you don't connect with the audience. There's no going back on that. Then if it's a 2.5 hour play, then this is 2.5 hours of misery because the audience all of a sudden is like, don't get this character. But yeah, for me, and that's still with me. I think that's still with me. It's something that you get that mindset, and I don't think it ever goes away, whether you do it or not. Like I ended up, like I married young, and I had kids, and I don't regret that. That's my life. They're amazing, and they are way better than I am. So I think the way it is like your kids become a better version of you. They're way better versions of me. But I went in a different direction. I did get offered a couple things early on, like soap opera work and stuff like that. And I was a big soap opera fan because I grew up in the 80s. But I ended up like saying, no, I can do that anytime. And that you kind of push it back and like, oh, I can do that anytime. And then like life happens. And then you're like, I guess anytime's not going to happen. But I don't know. I hope I answered the question.
No, that was great.
One thing I don't like is method. I'm not a method person.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. There's a story with Laurence Olivier, somebody that I greatly admire. And so he was making, I think it might have been Marathon Man with Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah.
And Hoffman's this really big method actor. And Laurence Olivier was older at the time. And they're doing this scene where he's running through the streets. And Hoffman would like stop and like, we got to do this over again. I got to get like, what's my character? What am I doing? And Laurence Olivier finally like was fed up. And he said, damn it, just act. It's not hard, just act. And that's the way that I always took it. Like, you don't need like, oh, I got to get in this character. No, it wasn't the Christian Bale style.
That's really interesting to me because, I suppose it's, I'm not an actor, so I haven't studied acting, but we hear a lot, especially from the films that I think are very popular among film fans online from the 1970s, let's say 1970s on, and a lot of method acting came from there, of course, influenced by the great actors before that. But that really, it became like almost second nature in terms of film discussions and the types of films that that are even popular now among film fans online. But so it's really interesting to hear you mention this. And you talk also about how there's a sort of thrill and on the stage, which is not possible to capture in the medium of film because of the nature of how the film is physically put together, editing and takes are taken. So it's not like a live audience or anything like that, which is, I think, a really fascinating aspect of this. And I must ask you then, as a sort of follow-up, which is, with this type of perspective that you have, do you find that you apply it in some form or another to how you view films now? I mean, I guess another way to put it would be, I mean, do you see films in a way that, how should I put it? Is your perspective on films in any way affected by your experience in the theater and your love of the theater and the way that you know how theater works, both on stage from the audience point of view and also from the artist's point of view? So you've directed plays and that sort of thing. Do you find that this perspective has somehow seeped into your film watching? And if so,
definitely
how?
it has to. I think if anything, it made me like respect what they do more, because you can't, because you know the setup, like the technical aspects of it, especially, and the editing. Editing was huge. I love like film editing. Nicholas Roeg's "Don't Look Now" is a masterclass of film editing. If anybody's ever going to go into film editing, please watch that movie, because that's one that it is so beneficial. So I think technically, like behind the scenes, like the choices that actors make, and and just the way that the film is shot, the way that it's staged, kind of comes through to me. And sometimes it's good and it's bad, because I got to turn that off sometimes, because sometimes I just want to enjoy the film. And you get to the point where you're looking at the movie and it's a flat screen, but you're seeing it 3D, because you're thinking, okay, the lights are here, the marks there, and you kind of like, you folks, I call it the Sherlock vision. like the Sherlock, get that Sherlock vision in your head when you're watching the movie of how how the movie's being done, because you're always studying, you're always like looking at the film and like enjoying it from different aspect. But sometimes you just got to sit back and just say, okay, I just want to have fun, I just want to watch a movie. And I've been able to do that more lately. More lately.
That is really fascinating. You know, I feel I'm not as I say, I haven't studied this, but from the 80s, you know, one of the things that I loved growing up was about special effects, and just finding out how did they do that, and watching horror films that had these special effects wizardry at work. And that was the big deal. And then Fangoria Magazine, and trying to figure out all this stuff going on. Oh, I just loved it. It was great. And before the internet, right? Before the time that we have now. And so I don't know how you feel about, say, I mean, it's in the air right now because of the upcoming Scream Factory box set, which is Friday the 13th. But let's take that as an example. You know, I feel very similar to you in that I watch those films and I try to enjoy them, and I do. But then part of my brain sometimes automatically goes into, oh yeah, that's the effect, and that's how this effect goes, and that's fun. That's really fun to think about the effect and how it turned into this. But then I also want to enjoy it and try to get the thrill out of that and try to get the scares out of that. So, but I think looking at the films in either perspective, I think, is a lot of fun. It really depends on what you're looking for, I suppose, in the moment.
I'm so excited about that box set, by the way. Yes, I'm super excited.
I loved I loved your announcement, by the way. It was great. I'm sorry. Yeah, please continue. Yes.
Well, thank you. But no, I was, one of the big things in my life, like I started going to conventions to talk to people, like, and eventually Tom Savini was coming. And I'm a Fango kid. I grew up with Fangoria and Gorezone and all those, but Fangoria was the big one at the time. Rue Morgue now, by the way, fantastic. But I got to meet Tom Savini, and I'd always heard online, "Oh, this guy's horrible. He's like he's really mean to his fans. He's a real jerk." And I get there, and he's like one of the nicest guys that I've met, and he's like super. You know, he reminds me kind of like you in a way. He's like super introspective, like very intellectual, which I see you as actually, especially when I'm watching videos. Um, and he and so we stood there and like we normally just go up to get your picture, that type of thing, but we talked a bit about films that he wanted to make, some scripts that he had kind of had in circulation. We talked a bit about like the shooting of like in the remake of Night of the Living Dead, and how he was a bit disappointed, how he wanted to make Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things to kind of be his like his version, his kind of his comeback for from that film. And he was extremely nice, and I was just lucky enough, I was blessed enough at the time that they were showing for the first time, he had like a documentary made on his life, which was showing that night at the sorry, I gotta get some water in a second. at the at the at the film festival. So we went to see that, and it's not the cut that's on Shutter. It was a longer cut. Actually, they cut some out on Shutter that I didn't think they should have. But it still went well. And he like did kind of like an interview, a Q&A after the film, and he was so nervous for somebody like that, and you got to see him in like in a different way, like this was his first time anybody had seen like this documentary that showed his life and other parts of his life, and the real reason why he had to go out of like special effects work for such a long time. And you could see that he like he just bared it, and he got up and he said, "I'll take some questions now," but there was like this sort of like kind of humbling thing, and like I grew up like Savini was like this icon of mine growing up, so to see him like just to be so modest and be so humble, I really appreciated that, and I really kind of felt more for the man. I grew like another level of like gratitude and like admiration for him. And often now when I'm online and people say, "Well, I had a bad experience with like," I'm saying, well, how exactly did you go in when you're going to speak to somebody like that? Because I think it matters. Like if you're going to like to talk to somebody, whether it be because I've spoken to people and they've actually been really sweet. Like there's always the people that are mean. Like sometimes like they say, "Don't meet your heroes," but a lot of times too, people can go in with a bit of, ownership. Like this is, "Hey, answer my question." And it may just be the fact that that question got asked a million times over the last 2 or 3 days, and it could just be tired. So I kind of take that into consideration. So when they announced the Friday 13th box set, I was so stoked. One thing, I'd seen Friday 13th 3D in theater, in actual 3D, back when it came out. So I was like super excited. I said, please, please, please let it be real 3D. I have a 3D TV, so I can have that. And they announced it was going to be real 3D. So that was big for me. And then they started announcing the special features and the 4K scans for the first 4 films and the new audio commentaries and the big thing, because was part 2. They found like the uncut version of part 2, and that was incredible. That was like kind of like, as a Friday fan, it was mind blowing.
Yeah, I am. I was so glad that you talked about it, and it was amazing. And I echo your sentiments very much. But I'm so jealous. So you actually saw Friday the 13th Part 3 in the theater.
I've seen, I think, pretty much all of them except for Freddy versus Jason in theater.
Oh my gosh! So you saw in 3D. You saw the juggling in 3D.
The
And
3D on Friday 13th 3 is really good.
oh, oh man, oh gosh, I wish I could have seen Friday the 13th Part 3 in the theater in 3D. That
It was it was a boon time for 3D. Like it was, they were putting out some, like, sometimes the movies were questionable, but they're putting out some actually like really good 3D at the time. And the reason that we haven't seen it before is because there was a special type of 3D that was used back then. It was used on Jaws 3D as well, and Friday 13th 3D, Amityville 3D. So I remember going to see all those. It was a big 3D craze at the time. You know, it was like, uh,
That's great, and Jaws 3D. And did you see that in the theater as well in 3D? So you saw the
yeah,
moment. I mean, there's so many great moments like such like I love how they pick the weirdest things to do in 3D. Like there's a moment when they're testing a syringe, and then they test it by in like pushing out the liquid through the needle, and the liquid shoots into the camera. I thought what a weird thing to
yeah,
do for 3D. That's so. And then like the beginning with the very beginning before the credits, right? The very, I guess, infamous shot of the fish and the fish head floating in 3D space, I suppose, in the bloody
it,
water and all this stuff. And then
it made
later
people
on,
jump.
oh really, real?
Yeah,
Oh, my goodness. I wish I could have. I saw that very young, Jaws 3D or Jaws 3, very very young. I think way too young, because even now, a lot. I don't know. Maybe it's not really regarded very highly in the Jaws series, but I think it scared me so much. It's really, and I'm not really claustrophobic, but my goodness, there are some scenes of claustrophobia, inducing cringe, scary stuff in that. And my goodness, oh gosh, that's a great. I'm sorry, but back to Friday the 13th for a second. So, may I ask, what are some of your favorite Friday the 13th films?
the first five are the top for me because I like living Jason and like the living killer as opposed to like the zombie uh, character. Now, six and seven are really good. They're really well constructed films and extremely well done. Six is probably one of the best like actual like made films in the Friday 13th series. But Friday 13th Part 5, which is done by Danny Steinman, who did Savage Streets with Linda Blair, it gets such a bad rap all the time because it's not Jason, but it's the closest thing to going back to the original that you ever get. It's a mystery again. It has the most brutal kill out of any Friday 13th series, and it's not Jason. It's the first kill of the film, and you don't see a lot, but it is pure, unadulterated anger and rage, and madness from a character that will not be seen on the screen ever again. Uh, bafflingly, because it's the person that causes all this. We never see him get killed, which is the one odd part. Uh, but uh, but that always stood out to me. That scene was like Friday 13 films. They're roller coaster rides, and they're fun, and the deaths are like the murder set pieces. That death seems very different from any other like death shot in the Friday 13th series. He just grabs the axe, and then we goes to the girls. We see them screaming, and it's like it's so much more effective for me anyway than sometimes when you see when you see everything. That stood out. And part three, when the guy's walking on his hands, they do this brilliant shot there. Oh, I love that scene.
And the sound effect with that as well, whack,
Yeah,
and part, yeah, that just was amazing. And you knew that was going to happen. Anyone who does something like that kind of handstand walk is not is not long for this for the Friday the 13th universe. You know what I mean? So it takes very little to offend the gods in that universe. So, I'm totally with you on A New Beginning. I think that is such an underrated classic. It's certainly not for everyone, and it has that kind. I mean, it has that, maybe that sort of stigma, the sort of. I love the film Halloween 3, but it has that kind of Halloween 3-ish kind of
yeah,
stigma, for reasons that are very obvious, of course. But I know the scene that you're talking about, and the chocolate, and
yeah,
I love how the what was Joey, right? It's Joey and the
yeah, Joe.
chocolate,
Yeah,
right? And I love how the chocolate is not messy on his face. It's very kind of clean, almost very cute in the way it's applied in his face. So he's been eating. It's like, you know that he's really enjoyed the chocolate, and all he wants to do is share this chocolate, this joy. And he's just a little bit upset that he didn't get the reaction that he was looking for. And then out of nowhere, he's done. He's finished. And then you're right. You don't see any kind of violence actually inflicted. You see a reaction, and you hear these quick zoom shots, and then the girls screaming, and then the sound effects. You only see the aftermath, right, when the sheet's pulled, and you see the carnage. But it's all like for a split second, and then it's gone. But of course, that's very important to see the reveal, right? Because
it's very important in the film.
Very, very important, because it means that we have to know who is the victim, and so that, right? So. That I agree with you 100%, my friend, about that film. And right, correct me if I'm wrong, but the box set will be having it has the earlier commentary track, right, which was made available before, but it has 2 new commentary tracks, right?
I think so. Yeah.
So
there's
3 commentary tracks, right?
Like there's a new fan one, like I think it was Joe Lynch and Adam Green, because they're huge fans. They have a podcast, and I'm not sure if it's going to be them, because they've talked about the films on their podcast, right? So I'm not quite sure if they're taking those podcast episodes and bringing them over as commentary tracks or not. But either way, I'll be really interested to hear them talking about it.
I mean, that's amazing to me. I mean, speaking of Friday 5. 3 commentary tracks for Friday the 13th, Part 5, The New Being. That's more commentary tracks than like most Criterion films. No, seriously, it's amazing, absolutely amazing. And you sometimes get Criterion. I mean, I love Criterion. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes you're getting Criterion releases without a commentary track. And I really think that's one of the great joys of home media, is getting these supplements, and I just hearing people talk about the films, and experts or fans, and getting these commentary tracks. You don't have to listen to them, but the option of having them, I think, is really wonderful. Well done, Scream Factory and Shout Factory. I mean, they're doing such stellar work. And you did a fantastic job, by the way, with your video talking about the announcement and the features.
Thanks. Actually, it was a fun video, because we actually had the director from Valentine and Urban Legend show up for the video when we did it. So I did. So I was really excited about that fact. I'm a huge slasher fan, and Urban Legend is one of my favorite slashers. And a while back, Jamie Blank sent me a message. And I'm like, I didn't see it in time, because they were making My Bloody Valentine. And for those that don't know, and never seen my channel, where I live is right next to where the original My Bloody Valentine was filmed at. So I go through Valentine's Bluff almost on a daily basis. It's 5 minutes away. So apparently somebody linked Jamie Blanks, the director, my review of Urban Legend, to him. He saw it, watched some more of my videos, realized I was in Nova Scotia, and tried to contact me to get me in contact with Scream Factory to do a featurette, because I live close to where it's done. I didn't see it for like 6 months. So after, like 6 months, 6 or 8 months afterwards, I didn't see it. So I missed out on being on being actually on a Scream Factory release. But it was really sweet of him, really nice guy. And when I did the live one where I talked about when all the features came in for the Friday 13th series, when I did that, he shows up, and we're going through, and it's like, those scenes from Part 2 are really kind of cool. And I'm like, you've seen the scenes from Part 2? And then I looked at the name, and I remembered. I'm like, are you who I think you are? And he said, yeah, it's me. I'm in Melbourne. So really sweet. He actually stayed for the entire video too. So and it was live. So that was like a big moment for me, to have like a director that I really love his work, and a composer too. He's a really good composer. Actually come on and talk. So that was nice.
You deserve it. You deserve that, because as I say, you do so much for the community, both like the fan community and also, right, the artists and the filmmakers. It's really, really wonderful. Really wonderful. You deserve all the attention that you can get, my friend. And oh my goodness, that kind of shout factory, scream factory story. Oh my goodness. Well, hopefully there will be many more opportunities in the future for right, for this, and not just a shout factory, scream factory, but maybe some other labels that you have been championing on YouTube. Right, you I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you are one of the, or if not the premier voice on YouTube championing labels like Severin and Vinegar Syndrome, and now look at them. They are just they are the premier labels when it comes to certain types of genre or cult films or the like. But as you say, they are incredibly important. Incredibly
Oh,
important.
definitely. I mean, like early on, and it came out like in the most just normal way. I was like tight on money as I was working, like not tight, and I wasn't like, but I had to focus my collecting. Like you get to a point when you realize you can't just buy everything. You just got to decide what you're going to go for. So I would theme years, and I themed a year where I did like about a lot of Criterion stuff. And I got to the end of the year, and I picked up like was I think it was a Scream Factory or a Vinegar Syndrome, one of those releases. And I said, you know what? This is an insane movie. It's super low budget, but I'm really, really enjoying it, and I'm rewatching it. I said, I want to do a WTF year of film. So around that time, Vinegar Syndrome announced their package for the month. I think it was November. So I went in, I bought like some Vinegar Syndrome stuff, and throughout the next year, I found like they had a lot of these kind of like these movies that were kind of lost, and I ended up buying more and more. So I ended up talking about Vinegar Syndrome a lot on my channel, and eventually Severin as well, as when they would go into like the black cases and soundtracks and stuff like that. So it got to the point where I got like nickname at the time, Mr. Vincent. So that's actually my Twitter handle, just so you know. And I was around that time. I think it was Stephanie Crawford. I got to give her credit, who've been on like Just the Disc and Scream Factory podcast, right? Screamcast as well. So basically, she'd been watching the channel, and she spoke to Brian, and Brian was the guy that did Just the Disc and Pure Cinema. And he came on and he watched a few of my videos, and he asked me, he said, well, I'm thinking about doing a Vinegar Syndrome like focused episode of my podcast. Would you like to come on that? So I went on for that, and then that ended up being like another one, and then we branched out into doing some other stuff. So I've been on there 4 or 5 times now, I guess. And recently I got to go on Cobwebs as well, which is a really, really good Gothic cinema podcast, because I love Hammer, and I love like Gothic. I love the Gothic stuff, and I'm finally able to talk about it. So that was really fun. I got to talk about Hammer's The Mummy, which is one that I champion, but a lot of people don't like. And I got to talk about another one people don't like, which is 13 Ghosts, and that was really fun.
That is amazing. That's amazing. I'm also you spoke about Stephanie Crawford and Brian Sauer, and I didn't realize it was Stephanie who had watched your channel and then mentioned it to Brian, and then that led to your appearances on the Just the Discs podcast. But that's really fantastic. I'm a huge fan of Brian and Stephanie. I think they're really they are like, I think Brian is like, I don't know, he must know everything there is to know about collecting. Like, if you have a Blu-ray release, he's heard about it, and he knows about it, and he knows everything that you need to know, all the information that's necessary to, and he just knows, and he probably seen the film. So what more could you ask for? It's amazing.
And
And
I gotta say, I was
please.
super like happy for him when he got to do a commentary for a film.
Yeah.
Like I was like I was like, yes, because you like to see people like that, like get the reward for all the work. And I was like, that's amazing. And now Daniel too on Cobwebs. I'm not sure if you've heard him or not,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
really, really good. Um, so it's been like I've been lucky to be surrounded by some very, very talented people that are really good at bringing out the best in people.
That's really lovely. I think, what was it? Oh gosh, I was going to ask you something, but suddenly I think I'm just I'm having a kind of a fanboy moment because, as I say, um, while we have a moment here, I just want to just once again echo what everyone else feels, which is like, how should I put it? Uh, like in the film fan community, in the collecting community, way before I started YouTube and uploading videos, I was watching your channel kind of religiously, and I still do. And you are like kind of like a god. I'm just, I'm in awe. It's like you are the legend. You are like god status legend in my eyes.
Well, it's kind of
And
ironic because like that's me and my better half. Like she's definitely I consider her the more learned of us two. But she one of the channels that she will sit down and watch with me is yours because she likes the way. Yeah, like she doesn't watch everything, but she likes your channel um, because you come across you know your stuff and you come across extremely sincere when it comes to stuff.
oh,
You've
that's
done
very
so
kind.
much. Like in all seriousness, though, you've done so much for the community. Like the interviews that you've done recently with people, like folk, like showcasing people that you wouldn't normally see showcased, and just to bring them to the forefront. Uh, that positivity and like that like sense of community. That's exactly what I hope to do. That I hope that I'm getting across when it comes to my channel. And when I see channels like you, like yours, do like just incredible stuff like that's that's the top for me. That's that okay. That's where I want to see the film community. This is where I want to see the YouTube film community going. Is in the direction that your channel's going. Isn't just it lifts it up because it's so easy to go on and like get all negative and get like a bunch of views and stuff like that. But when you got a channel that actually lifts people up and like brings eyes to the films that may not like normally get it, your channel does that. So you're extremely humble, but you do amazing stuff. And I've been watching it for quite a while. I was actually kind of blown away when I found out that you actually saw my channel.
Oh, wow. Wow, I'm very honored. I don't quite know what to say actually, but thank you very much for that. I guess I consider myself very fortunate, because I think, like you, I think, I remember a time where, back, I'm a child of the 80s, and this was during the VHS era. So I remember a time when not all these films were accessible, and you had to rely on what you were reading, and you had to rely on getting secondary information from here and there. It wasn't through the internet, and you had to just do a lot of the detective work yourself, and just write with film books and the like, and it just kind of grew and grew and grew until you finally were able to see the films. And then now with this, right, you talked about Anchor Bay and those great clamshell cases for the VHS.
Yeah.
And then it had, I remember also the Halloween VHS tape, right? And it had like, or something like that. And then and then like now it's almost second nature with covers that you can flip, and you can change the artwork and things of that nature. But and now the accessibility is just through the roof. We are truly living in a golden age. But I remember a time when it was right, VHS days, but even those days were still, as glorious as they were very limited. But I think that was part of the charm
Yeah.
of that. So, but I think from that I was able just to try to I was very fortunate because I can rely on a lot of the stuff that I saw and a lot of the things that I remember seeing. I can rely on that more than I can watching recent films, because I don't have that much time, unfortunately, to watch the more recent film stuff. So I wish I did, but your comments are very, very kind, and I'm quite flattered by that, very much so. Wow, thank you so much. But but let me now just turn the attention back to you, if I may, because this is fascinating stuff, and I feel like I've just only been able to scratch the surface of this, which is, can I just ask you just kind of maybe it might be a random question, but I always wanted to know what are some of those, how should I explain it? Yeah, what are just some of those films now that I don't want to say what are your favorite films, because I know it's impossible to answer. I know
Yeah.
it's absolutely impossible to answer, but what are just some of the films that you could say that you would mention if someone were to ask you, what are some of your favorite films? What are some of those that you would mention right now?
Oh,
And you can talk about any film that you want, my friend. I'd love to hear it.
okay. No, what? Obviously, Black Christmas '74 was my favorite film. That's but like it is actually my favorite film, and I'm in any genre because of the way that it was done. Um, it's very Canadian in its way too. I enjoy that. But like when it comes to different genres, for like say if we're talking film noir, then I think you need to see Narrow Margin and you need to see Out of the Past. Those are two that I think are key. Um, when God, there's so many. Uh, Sue Bry's work with Ultraman, love that. But Vinegar Syndrome, the ones that got me that I didn't expect. Incubus really stuck with me. Cassavetes acting in that was, he took some brave choices. And there's one that, and it's not for everybody. Roberta Franklin made a movie called A Woman's Torment. And it's pretty much like there's an X-rated and R-rated cut of the film. There's both two different cuts, but it's kind of like Repulsion. It's very much like Repulsion, in that with the girl with this almost like internal like struggle. And I think what made it for me was that the actress was so unique and different. And as you find out the story behind the scenes, the actress decided one day, she's out there where they're filming on the beach and she's with one of the people that are filming with her, and she said, let's leave. So they did, and she just left. So there's a lot of the sequences where it's actually the director, Roberta Finley, with a wig on, playing her part from back on. And it stuck with me. Those movies kind of really stuck with me. It's a lot of times, like, there's always the big stuff. There's always going to be things like The Thin Man that I always fell in love with. I love the Nick and Nora Charles thing. When I was young, like, that's the relationship I wanted. I wanted to be with somebody that was going to be like pushing me up, better than my equal type of thing. And like I say, I'm better half. She's like that. She's honest. But there are so many. I mean, it's so hard. I'm thinking there's ones that I want to say, and slasher films, Friday the 13th, like the second one over the first one, if I'm going to be honest with you, because the acting and the actors in the second one just, it's so different from the rest of the series too. If you go to part two, not everybody dies. A lot of them that you expect to die go off into the town. And there's the comedy guy that dies in every Friday the 13th film. And what's his last scene? Hey, is there an after hours type of thing going on? His last scene in the film. Incredible. And like, because you don't expect it, especially if you're going in now, like you're younger. And I really got to say, for a younger person going in and with all these choices now, it's amazing. To go in and say, oh, well, they're dead for sure. And like, nope. No, they're not. So that was an amazing experience for me. And I like the pre-mask. I like the sack. It really creeped me out with the one eye.
That is amazing. Yeah, yeah. Friday the 13th part two. Yes. I'm also a big fan. And I'll put up you've mentioned it before, but I too am just so excited, over the moon for the possibility of seeing these heretofore uh, unseeable deleted scenes footage for this film in next month. I can't wait for this. I really
It's
am
gonna be.
just, oh, I don't know, like this is, how long have we been waiting for this? It's always been in the air, it's been in the ether, but
Yeah. How many box sets have we bought of Friday the 13th, waiting to get a good box, waiting to get this to come? Because I have at every one except for the tin. I didn't get the tin. I didn't like, and I'll tell you why. I didn't like the aesthetic look
yeah,
for the tin. Yeah, I know you got the tin there.
yeah,
I wanted it for the camp, Chris, the badge.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, yeah,
yeah.
it's cheesy, but you do because you're a fan. That's what you want. But no, I loved that. And last night, Vinegar Syndrome announced their October bundle.
Yeah, yeah.
So anytime Vinegar Syndrome announces something huge, uh, more views on my channel than ever. More people come in because I kind of got, I'm known for Vinegar Syndrome at this point, and stuff like this. So they did this movie that I'd seen back in college. I think it was like maybe the first or second movie I rented ever in college on my own. So it was a big deal. It was a rental that I went out and did myself. Um, so it was a movie called Who Done It, and it's like this 80s slasher, like it's Agatha Christie, and then there were none. Like there's actors on an island, and they're slowly getting picked off, and obviously somebody's doing it. A super gory film for back in the day. I'm not sure if it's still gory today, but it was back then. And so, of everything that got announced there, like because there was some like crazy announcements, like for the bundle, that was like this film, and I've only ever seen it in like VHS, and the quality was horrible. It was extremely dark. There's another film that I think about. There's a movie called Humongous, a exploitation slasher film, where these people get caught on an island, and there's another island one, and there's this guy that's living on the island that like people don't know exists, and he's like picking them off one by one. But like the because of the, I guess the didn't have a lot of money for lighting and stuff. It's extremely dark, but it works because of that. So I was like looking at the screenshots of Who Done It today, just before I did this, actually before I came on here, and it's just so amazing to look at it and see like, wow, that was actually, there's a pool scene. I thought it was dusk, but the pool scene is actually in the daylight. It's that much difference. So there's just so much. They say like, is physical media dying? Like I don't think so. I think like we're on a like you said, a golden period right now when it comes to collecting. And that's what's been so great is that for a while it was casual. Everything was coming out, but it was like all the regular stuff, all the mainstream stuff that's what people would focus on. And if there's a movie like, let's just say, if you wanted Zombie 3, it would be like a $2 movie with not very good quality in a bin somewhere. That's what you'd find. And now the tables have turned, and it's the genre films. It's the films that film students like study that like you didn't get any type of love before. It's the Night of the Hunters that are all of a sudden are getting this attention, and it is such a great time. It's so amazing.
I, I'm so kind of happy whenever I hear you speak about. I'm filled with so much joy right now. But I have to ask you also, which is, how many titles do you currently have in your collection, approximately?
I no longer know. The last count was probably a couple years ago, and I think that was around a little over. It was over 5,000 at that point. But that was like if you put like box sets and stuff together. Now, right here, this is one room. I have like another room just for TV. Uh, and that's all TV sets. And upstairs, I've got 2 glass cases where I put like my bigger like stuff, like my bigger sets and some stuff. And up on my bedroom, I've got like a couple shelves there for movies that I'm like watching for the channel, or movies that I'm just like I've just recently received them. Kind of my to watch pile, I guess. To use the Brian Sowers term from Just a Disc, it's to my to watch pile. Except my to watch pile is like a shelf.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And what are some of your, what, as a collector, because you are one of the premier collectors I've ever met. It's absolutely amazing. What are some of the what are some of your the examples, like the pride and joy items in your collection? What are those that you are most proud of, or the ones that you are so happy to have in particular as a collector?
Some are like for collector's reasons. Some are just because I just love having the film.
Please.
The Vincent Price's Arrow, the box set that Arrow put out for Vincent Price, with the book, was amazing. Because like I said, my roots for collecting come like in comics and stuff too. So to see stuff like that, when Scream Factory put out the Halloween box set, it's a set that fans thought could not happen because there were so many rights issues for different companies. That definitely. Recently, Gamera. Oh my God, Arrow killed it with a Gamera set. I couldn't believe what was on that set. It was like the commentaries, the different like versions of the film. But not only that, the different dubs. Like people are asking, will they have like just the subtitles? Will there be any dubbing? Can we get any of the dubs? No, we can get all the dubs apparently. So they got the Sandy Frank dubs and everything. So as a big Gamera fan, and I honestly. Mill Creek recently started putting out the Ultraman sets, and as that's honestly like a key component to my collection. I got the Shout Factory Power Ranger sets. I'm a huge Sentai fan, so I grabbed like a lot of that. And when Mill Creek said, "Oh, by the way, we're putting out Ultraman," it's like, yes, I need that. And the guys that work at Mill Creek, some of them were guys that worked at BCI before. So I collected a lot of BCI stuff. I'm a big animation collector as well. So they put out these sets, these He-Man and She-Ra sets, these Pink and 8 sets. They were paint and ink sets. So they were like really, you put them all together and there's a big mural that it would make up, like a picture of like the whole thing. So they're doing that with Ultraman. So if you buy the regular edition, not the steelbooks, but you buy the regular editions of the Ultraman series and you put them together, it makes this big mural. And that amazes me. That the fact that like as soon as they did that, I was like, is that the guy from BCI? And then I was watching Serial at Midnight channel, Heath over there, and because we're good friends, we talk a lot. And he interviewed the guy. He interviewed Barrett Evans from Mill Creek, and he's talking to and he was like, yes, I used to work for BCI. I'm like, yes, I knew it. I knew you worked for BCI because that Ultraman thing was that's had BCI written all over it.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I'm a big fan of Ultraman and Tsuburaya. You mentioned Tsuburaya before, and in fact, I live very near to sort of the production studios, and
Wow.
when they were really active, I lived very near there, and I lived actually near Toho Studios as well. It's maybe like a, I don't know, 10-minute bike ride or something, and I can go there. There's no tours or anything like that, but you can go around the outside. But the little town before that is, you have all these Ultraman statues and the like, and so and it's really amazing. But yeah, those sets are fantastic. I have the steel books, and I didn't realize about this mural setup until you mentioned it to me off mic or off camera. And so I'm are those aren't limited, are they?
I don't think so. I mean, they're
Okay.
I guess everything, the way they're taken out, and rest in peace, Nick Redmond from Twilight Time.
Yeah.
He did an interview once on a podcast, And he said, well, what? They asked him, like, why do you do movies like with 3,000 copies or 4,000 copies? Why do you limit it to that? You know, you can probably make more money, like just sell them more. And he said, yeah, but we're not sure that they're going to sell. And sometimes they take a while to sell out, and everything's limited. Companies are, you know, there are companies that'll make things on demand now, but like nowadays, especially, there's not an unlimited copy of physical copies. Like you'll eventually see movies like Scream Factory now, that a lot of stuff goes out of print. It's not stuff like that was at the time said, oh, this is limited. But rights issues happen. You know, things change hands. They already have them for a certain number of years. So as far as I know, they're not limited at all. But everything's limited in the space of physical media. Like everything, even your local like $5 movie, like probably is a Warner. I remember picking up Warner. Which one was it? Not the Entity, but something like that. It was something around that time, around that style. And I got it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got this one. Ned Lepus. Okay, it was I had Ned Lepus, and all of a sudden, Ned Lepus now it's a burn on. It's a burn on one. It's a movie on demand. So you can't get the original. You gotta go to Warner and then get it. It's like they do like Warner Archives. That's all burn on demand stuff. So movie on demand. So the actual back when you could buy the physical copy in the store, it's not the same anymore. It's you turn over the disc and you see that like purple color and stuff.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's a really that's yeah, that's an interesting point, and you're absolutely right when it comes to, yeah, everything's limited. It's just a matter of when and whether they say it or not. And in fact, I think a lot of times whenever a label says that this is limited, I think that's also a kind of a certain way of marketing a particular product, because it means that, right, because people would be more inclined to press the OK button and put it in their shopping cart rather than just save it for later. You know what I mean? So I certainly feel that pressure whenever something comes up that it says limited to, you know, whatever it is, 1,000 copies or 3,000 copies or whatever. But it's a kind of a tough terrain sometimes to figure out exactly
what to go for.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, do you have that when you do your own shopping? Is it usually do you like what's the percentage of films that you purchase that you have seen versus the percentage of films that you'd say you haven't seen?
Oh well, having grown up in like the VHS era, like you, we've probably seen more than like maybe some people have seen. So like but there's always like different cuts of films. Severin put a Werewolf in a Girl's Dormitory, like with the new uncut version of that. I'd never seen that before. There's always movies that are kind of blind buys for me, and I get so excited when I get a blind buy, because you collect so much. It's not you get jaded, but you're like, okay, yeah, I've seen that, but I want the good version of it. But then you see companies, and I think that's how I got to companies like Arrow Video and Severin and Scream Factory and Vinegar Syndrome, is because they started putting out stuff that I hadn't seen so much. One of the beautiful things is Arrow Video put out 2 of these box sets called the American Horror Project, regional horror box sets, and not enough eyes get on regional horror, and those were like such revelations for me to watch those and to see the stuff. Like, they were so well done. I championed them, and I was like, buy this box set. You got to buy this box set. It's a really good set. We want to see more of this come out. So by the time the second one came out, everyone like just jumped on the first one, and then nobody could get the first one. But you can buy them separately now, which is good. And of course, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong because Wim Greff or Wim Greffe. They're doing a set of his stuff, which pretty much is an offshoot of the regional horror, because he's a regional horror director. So it's nice to see that. And one thing I got to give a shout out for is Severin's Al Adamson set. That was amazing. What they did with that. The documentary is incredible. David Greger's really good with the documentaries. But having pretty much like an entire, like, I got the Bergman collection from Criterion, and that's a prize piece in my collection as well. But it's so odd because you got Bergman by Criterion, Herschel Gordon Lewis by Arrow Video, and L. Adamson by Severin. Three very different directors, but we got almost their entire work put into these box sets, and that amazes me, and that's the thing I'm very excited about right now.
That's an amazing set. That's an amazing set, and I'm so glad you mentioned it in the same breath as the Bergman box set, which I love and I champion very much. Um, yeah, but it's that is one of the best sets out there at the moment, and so. Yeah, yeah, and you're absolutely right. I want to mention, I want to go back a little bit also to something that you said before, which is, we are really living in a kind of golden time, a golden age, and it's there's just so many labels out there. Of course, right? Some labels, maybe have certain issues more than others. Of course, we have to mention the great work of Twilight, and right. What are some others? You mentioned Shameless as well, from the UK. And they're still going. They're going at it, so that's great for them. I'm a personal fan of 88 films, and I love what they're doing with their particular lineups. Just between you and me, I'm considering doing something for Halloween. 'Tis the season. I'm not sure if I'll be able to put it together, but I am thinking about just going through the slasher. Well, I don't know if I have time to do both the slasher film series and the Italian film series, but they have a couple of lineups there, and I'm a particular fan of their Italian film series and the slasher film series, and so I'd love the opportunity to go through each of them one at a time. And so in preparation, I'm revisiting all of the films that I have on 88 Films, and it's been a wonderful experience. I've been watching some Criterions one moment, and then I've been watching 88 Films. It's been a wonderful balance for me. So I don't know. I hope I can do something like that for Halloween, but I'm not sure yet. But incidentally, can I ask, are you going to plan to do something on your channel for Halloween?
I plan to do the 31 Days of Horror. There won't be totally live this year because I'm traveling for 1 week. But I will be doing some live videos with my dad as well. So that's going to be interesting too. We're going to talk about like Hammer and Amicus, and hopefully get into some Jess Franco too. My dad's like really big fan of that stuff. I'm looking forward to those 80 film videos, man. I'm a huge fan of them. You got to mention when you're on there, because one of them there, I think it might be the Sorority Babes and Slime Ball Bolorama, where they have the bonus feature, and it's Linnea Quigley's workout video, her horror workout video. Oh, and it gets a commentary, which you gotta love. It gets its own commentary. That's amazing, man.
I'm so yes. I'm so glad you met. Yes, it's yeah. I'm a Linnea Quigley. I'm right there with you, my friend. Yeah, they're really doing some fantastic stuff. So I was first attracted to them when they were what was it? The film was Nail Gun Massacre.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's just one of those. It's like it's just this kind of absurdist work of art. You either love it or you don't, and you either go along with it or you don't. And if you go along with it, it's so much fun. It's just bonkers all over the place. It's so much fun, and it has its own kind of what do you call it? It has its own like laws of physics within within the film world. People act a certain way, and you just have to accept it, I suppose. But I was trying to find Nail Gun Massacre, and lo and behold, I was able that sort of brought me to the 88 Films, and the rest, as they say, was history. So, but
I actually love that movie.
oh yes, have you spoken about it on your channel before?
Not only that, but when I was in St. John's, when I lived there, me and my kids, for a short period of time, we did a series of videos called the Buck. I think it was the Buck 49 Special or something like that. And the title of the vlog was a reference to that film, because when they go to the drive and get food, to go to the place to get food, there's a big sign, like, like telling you what the special is, and they ask for the special, and when she comes with the food, not at all what's on that sign, by the way. I think the sign had a grilled cheese or something like that, and like she comes with a burger, which she's obviously gotten from like a drive-in or something like that. Totally different food, and I'm like, oh, this is brilliant. There's also a scene where like they find a dead body, and like the doctor comes with the police officer, and they look at the body and like, yeah, looks like somebody's been killed, and they just leave him there. They're like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's one of those. It's not for everyone, that's for sure. But it's one of those like you have to see it to believe it type of films. That's for sure. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Everyone who comes into my house has to watch it. Like that one and Things. Everybody has to watch, like Nail Gun Massacre and Things. Those are two movies that get shown like to everybody that they have to suffer through in this house.
And I have to ask. So your family also is it's a family of film enthusiasts as well, correct?
Oh yeah, definitely. My
What kinds
oldest,
of
my
films?
daughter,
Yeah.
definitely wants to get into it.
Oh, what kinds of films in particular do members of your family enjoy?
Well, I think my mom likes like the regular, like just like a lot of the like the mysteries and like true crime stuff like that. My dad grew up like loving like the the Hammer and the Amicus, a lot of the Jess Franco and Lucio Fulci stuff. My kids are big Asian horror fans. That's what they're into, because well, my youngest speaks some Korean, and my oldest speaks some Japanese. So that's been a I'm struggling with French. Uh, but yeah, they've been like big on that. And then my better half, she loves the Lord of the Rings and the what she calls the trifecta trilogies. Is like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and Indiana Jones, the original three on all those. So she likes that. She's a big fancy person. Like she won't watch Bergman with me because she'll find it too depressing. Like she's the type of person where we'll watch a movie, and if it's like a scary movie or whatever, it'll stick with her afterwards, which is kind of comical, because when we met, I thought she told me, well, I like scary movies, and I like those like El Santo, like wrestling type movies. By the way, Kino's playing at two El Santo movies. I'm super excited about that. But so we would like hang out, and it was just like hanging out watching movies at the time. It's long before we started dating, and I would bring, like she said, I brought like, I think it was High Tension, which is a really like, it's a French, like one of the French extremes. And I brought like another film there at the time. I said, well, she must really like really creepy movies. So I'll bring like creepy movies the next time that we hang out. So I'd go over and I bring like movies. I'm like, wow, that movie was really scary. I guess I'll bring another one. We'll kind of get something even scarier or more extreme than that. So what I didn't know is she was just being super polite. She was petrified after watching these films and not sleeping. Uh, but she was too nice to tell me. And I was thinking, oh my God, this is this real big horror fan. I got to step my game up. I got to find even scarier, more extreme stuff for her. And it was just the opposite. So it's amazing that we're still together. But that's how it started.
That is absolutely lovely. That is really lovely, and please convey to her please convey to all your family my warmest regards, and to your to your wife, I want to say also, to your better half, I want to say that I too am a big fan of Lord of the Rings, excuse me, and Star Wars and Indiana Jones, the trilogy, right? So very much so, and that's amazing. So you have those films in your collection, correct?
Oh yeah, I gotta get the 4K editions of Star Wars. I don't have those yet. I was hoping that they would have put like like the original versions in there, but they didn't. I do have like those DVDs where they had the the 2-pack where we have the new remastered film and the uncut film, like the original version of the film. I got those when they came out. I think I'm still missing one. But I love I saw the Star Wars films in theater, like with same as Indiana Jones, stuff like that, because that's what you grew up with. I was at that age where you'd go to see those films, and I think I wanted to be like, for a short time, wanted to be like an archaeologist because of Indiana Jones. And my better half too, she loved the Indiana Jones films, and she wanted to be. She said, I want to be an archaeologist, but she was like, she loved marine biology because that's what she went to school. That's what she ended up going to school for. She's like, oh. See, if I didn't go to school for marine biology, I could have been an archaeologist. But she's like she's a shark lover, and before she actually moved to the area where she met me at, because she's from Morocco originally, and she had a chance to go to Australia and actually swim with sharks and study them, but her mom's like, not so much. So I'm glad her mom said no, because I met her. So.
Oh, that's great. That is lovely. And you mentioned also right. There's your father and sort of the Hammer horror, and also Amicus, right? You mentioned Amicus horror. I love Amicus. I'm a huge. What are some of the favorite Amicus titles?
Dr. Terror's House Horrors definitely stands out right away. I remember seeing that one. I remember seeing it like on Saturday afternoon, and when I lived in Alberta. That's what what's the name of it again? The Beast Must Die. A lot of people hate that one, but I love it because it's got the Werewolf Minute. And as a kid, I'm like, oh my God, the Werewolf Minute is so amazing. And it's got such good cast. You got like Peter Cushing and Kelvin Lockhart's in it. I think there's Asylum. I like Asylum a lot. I like a lot of the Robert Bloch ones. I gotta get Psychopath. I don't have Psychopath, which is one that they did, that Robert Bloch wrote, and it's been a long time since I've seen it. So I'm assuming I still like it. There's a movie that I really champion, that I really want to get a really good release, and I'm sure it's one that you've seen. So it was Frankie Avalon, and it's a movie called Blood Song, and he plays a killer in it, and he's got this kind of like flute, and that really. It's one I've always wanted to see a good release for. And when I mentioned companies, by the way, we haven't mentioned Indicator, and Indicator does such good stuff. I'm waiting for the Fu Manchu set, and I got the behind me. I got 12 of their box sets so far: the William Castle ones, and 4 of the Hammer ones, and all the Ray Harryhausen. Because I grew up on Ray Harryhausen, I love Ray Harryhausen stuff.
Thank you for mentioning Indicator. I love Indicator. They started out with, and they still do. They have such a surprising lineup, right? And then when they started to release their box sets, it was just they're like amazing work. But right there, I remember when they first were announcing their initial lineup, and I was so intrigued, and they were doing the spine numbers. So that's kind of the kiss of death in terms of one's wallet, right? Because if you have a label that's releasing spine numbers, it's really hard to resist. And so, and they had some really interesting, quirky titles to begin with, and even some, like, they had Happy Birthday to Me in there.
I got that one.
Yeah, and Christine too, what is it? Ghost of Mars too, I think, and then they started to release their box sets, and Samuel Fuller set, and
that's a good
also
set.
and also they released Hardcore. The Paul Schrader film,
George Scott. That's brutal, but amazing.
Oh, what a release! Yeah, and amazing. That's one of the premier labels out there. They're really doing exciting stuff. Yeah, I agree.
We did Paul Schrader's Blue Collar as well, which is an incredible film that not enough people have seen.
Yeah.
One thing I got to say, and what I really love about them, is they have these like long Guardian interviews on their sets, and it is so nice. If you like, Criterion had the thing for film school in a box that was kind of like the label, it's like idea. Indicators definitely that, because they go deep, like they dive really deep. I kind of find it odd that like n- Criterion's kind of like slacked off a little bit, unfortunately, on some of the features and some of the commentaries. When it was Criterion under their Laserdisc that actually kind of started this whole thing in the first place. They started doing like the commentaries. So they're like, you know, the grandfathers of it.
I completely understand what you say about that, and I must admit that there are times, and as I say, I'm a huge Criterion fan. You know this, right? And you
Yeah,
speak
me
about
too.
the Laserdisc, right? And you are, of course, as well. And you speak about the Criterion Laserdisc, right? There, I have them here, right? So the Criterion Laserdiscs, and so I'm a huge fan, and I really enjoy what they do. That being said, I have uh, made it vocal about some of the things that I wish they could improve upon, because as you say, I think a lot of other labels are really just hitting it out of the park. And Criterion could do something, a lot of the same things, but it's surprising to me, for instance, how limited some of the features are on some of their releases, and they're really. I'm particularly I'm particularly noticing the lack of commentary tracks. I mean, it's not completely bereft, but
Yeah.
it's noticeable when it's not there, and they have these great opportunities to do so. But it's not like the supplements are terrible. I think they're really great, but
Oh yeah.
it's what you say. There are things that, and perhaps it's out of Criterion's control. Who knows? I think here's an example. You mentioned the Gamera set from Arrow, which I think is one
Yeah.
of the most amazing sets I've ever come across. To be perfectly honest, it's absolutely amazing. And then you compare that with the Godzilla set from Criterion. I love the Godzilla set, and I think it's great. I love the Godzilla films. I have like I don't know how many copies of the Godzilla films and the Toho Tokusatsu film. It's too many to count. You know, my wife is very angry with me because I have too many or something. You know, but it's right. I love them. I love them to death. But the Criterion set is imperfect. It is an imperfect set. It could have been so glorious. When the Gamera set arrived, I must admit, and when I finished exploring it, the first thing I thought of was, if Criterion had done something of this caliber with the Godzilla set, it would have been amazing. It came so close, but there are some deficiencies in the Criterion set, which I've spoken about, which are
I
unfortunate. No, but
A lot
I'm
of it
sorry. Go
has to
ahead.
do
Yes.
with like, the studio. Like
Yeah.
Toho Studio is very tight fisted when it comes to Godzilla. So I think they were very limited in what they could do. So I love the Godzilla set too, and there is a lot of stuff that he definitely could have done that would have made it a little bit better. I think with Criterion right now, what a part of it is some stuff is limited what they can do, and I think they may need an infusion of some new blood that's been looking at these other places because you're getting to the point where stuff like where the companies like Arrow video is putting out like the same thing that Criterion puts out, and at points the Krzysztof Kozlowski set, for instance, surpass them. And you don't expect that because this is supposed to be this. They're they built their thing on the gold standard, and I think really it all started because Criterion did Laserdisc first, and they had like popular movies like RoboCop and stuff like that. Those movies eventually became too expensive to get. So where do you go as a label after that? Well, you go for like some of the foreign stuff and some of the kind of like the more indie stuff, the art house, kind of the stuff that at the time would have been cheaper to get. So by amassing like a library of films like this, they're getting some of what will eventually be considered some of the most important films. Like to cinemaphiles, these are important films in cinema history. So they got this like kind of eventually got this like prestige of being this prestige label, and that's such an amazing marketing when you think about it. It's like we don't have the money to get all the big pictures, but we can get these. And as it goes through, oh wait a minute, these are good pictures. These are Bergman. This is Fellini. This is people. These are the movies that people look at when they're in film school. We're a film school in a box. were the were the series films, which is a great marketing tool.
Sorry, and you are so right when you speak about the things that Criterion did during the Laserdisc era. I mean, it was I mean, I don't know how much you know about the Laserdiscs and Criterion, but a lot of it was a big mess, to be perfectly honest, because the spine numbering was still off. There was still a lot of things that were still trying to be worked out. So it wasn't perfect. It wasn't a perfect system, but they were still, I mean, but it was really fantastic because they were pioneering. They were doing so much and they were trying to do new things. I think it was the first time they introduced spine numbers. It was the first time you had commentary tracks, right? The first commentary track was for King Kong, and that eventually became known as spine number 2 of that. And then they are the first to introduce letterbox, or trying to introduce a kind of letterbox or preserving the aspect ratio to the extent possible, starting I think with Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and then going on from there, and then trying to fit in all these features. They are the first to release these Bergman films, Kurosawa films, and then you had the more popular films, right, like Ghostbusters, and you mentioned RoboCop, and then like what some of the titles later, like Train Spotting, or and then gosh, what are some other popular titles?
Breakfast Club nowadays, I guess.
I guess so. Yeah, you're right. And then they released some more risque, like some of the John Waters films, like Pink Flamingos. They released on Laserdisc, which is one of the and polyester too, with their own Laserdisc size Odorama card, which they now have for the Blu-ray equivalent. So, and I have 2 copies of that, by the way. So I was very fortunate to get that. But yeah, but you're right too. Also, that they really pioneered a lot of stuff, and they became, or they gained this aura, which I know it's anecdotal, but there is this thing called and I'm sure you've noticed, the Sight and Sound BFI top, what is it, greatest films list as voted by selected critics and directors. And they do it, the last time they did it was in 2012. And they do the list, and the film that was number 1 was Vertigo. It used to be Citizen Kane, but it was then Vertigo. And we'll see what happens. I don't know if they'll do a list in 2022. I hope so, but that's, I think, every 10 years. You look down that list in 2012, I think a good portion of those films that are in the top 200 are actually titles that are Criterion titles. And that Criterion percentage ratio has ever since grown from there. And so it's been said anecdotally that part of the thing about Criterion is that people will watch them, and there's already this kind of aura built up of, oh, this is a great film, right?
Yeah.
And I think ultimately it I mean, as I say, I'm a big champion of them, but at the same time, I completely understand that Criterion is just one small drop in a very vast ocean of cinema. And I think Criterion would be first to acknowledge that as well. There are many great films outside of Criterion. I'm sorry, go ahead, please. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say this, especially right now. I mean, like when Criterion were starting, like, and they're like trailblazers, and there's so many companies that have come on and have definitely owed a debt to Criterion, but have done amazing things alongside. Now there's a time when it was like we had Anchor Bay and we had Criterion, and there was other stuff, but now you've got Indicator, and you have 88 Films. You've got you've got Severin. You've got Vinegar Syndrome. You've got Arrow Video. I think Arrow Video is probably the closest when it comes to like with Criterion style, with their features. There's BFI and Eureka. When you're looking at that type, and BFI does some amazing stuff. Especially BFI did a series called Flipside, and if there's one movie that I can say everybody should definitely check out at least once, there's a movie called Deep End, and it was put up by BFI. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And I went into it completely blind, not knowing at all what was going to happen. And what happened was very different than I expected. Very, very good film. And there's a top recommendation for me right there.
I share your recommendation about the film Deep End. That's a film that is really quite remarkable. A lot of Japanese critics, in particular, are champion that film very much. So BFI is incredible. I was incredibly impressed. Let's take an example. The BFI releases of some of the films by Yasujiro Ozu, the Japanese filmmaker, I think are just absolutely splendid. And I'm very impressed with that. I think one of the things also that you mentioned, which is, but you just have a lot of, how should I put it, a lot of labels now that perhaps are or were in Criterion's debt, but now are just doing things, and they know their market, what people want, and it could be maybe I might be making excuses for them. I'm not sure, but there could be issues. I'm just speculating, but there could be issues of rights and licensing that prevent certain supplements from being made, etc. I'm not sure, but one thing's for sure: there are a number of labels now that are doing really incredible work, and I completely agree with you that now people say Blu-ray is dying, or the formats are dying, physical media is dying. If it happens, and I'll be ready for it when it happens. But as of now, I don't see any signs of it going away anytime soon. I don't know how you feel about that.
No, I don't. I mean, like, if it could get to like a record stage where it becomes like a collector's medium, but I think it's going to be like a cyclical thing. Like, we're going to see big boosts and it's movies that we want to see. It's with it's not just the average movie that's getting the special editions nowadays, and that makes me excited. I think when you realize how important it is for physical media, and one of the things that Don Coscarelli recently got the rights back to Beastmaster. Which is a fun, cool, cheesy film. Then he realized he can't find any of the actual negatives for the original Beastmaster print. So he's on a desperate search to find the print of Beastmaster. And the movie wasn't made that long ago, in the 80s. And it may already be something that, aside from the physical media versions that we got right now, is lost to time. If you can't find the OCN or the original camera negative for the film, it's something that that's not around anymore. When MVD Rewind, there's another company there was putting out Abominable. Before, like, the director that was doing Abominable, they did Abominable, actually got the film rights to it, and then he realized he couldn't find the film, and they found like stacks and stacks of film. And it had to be like re-put together, and there was a huge search just to find it. And the movie was done in, I think, late 90s, 2000s. So movies nowadays, physical media is so important because it is so easy for a movie to get lost in the shuffle. For like, as a Doctor Who fan, early Doctor Who stuff, they'd tape over the episodes rather than keep them, because nobody thought back then people were gonna see them afterwards. And now there's like a whole like seasons of Doctor Who where like there's big blocks of the classic series that you don't have, and you just have to. The people were lucky enough back in the day to because you couldn't put a VHS tape in. What you would do is you would actually tape off the sound. So there's people that taped off the Doctor Who, the sound of it, and now they're doing like animated versions of them with the original soundtrack.
Oh man, you are a man very close to my heart. I too am a Doctor Who fan. Who is your doctor, by the way?
Well, I think Tom is kind of like was my first.
Yeah.
But I can't say there's a doctor that I don't like. There's ones that I like for certain reasons. I had a big love of Colin Baker, which a lot of people didn't like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
he
The
has
Sixth
such a love
Doctor.
for
Yeah,
it. Reading his interviews in Starlog magazine, and it would be and they'd be talking. He'd be like, "I wanted to play Doctor Who for the longest period of time. I
yeah,
really grew up in the character. I love this character."
yeah.
And then like 2 years later, he's gone, and you're like, "Oh
Well, he
man."
had a. It was a tough period too because there was a lot of right. It was Doctor Who was right. Doctor in Distress, right? So it was.
Oh my
It
God,
was.
yes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to mention that. I listened. I mean, it's. I'm starting to get into that, but uh, it was a tough time, and I don't think it's anything to do with Colin Baker. I like his arc because he starts. He reminds me a lot of Peter Capaldi's arc, in this sort of
Exactly.
angry, confused doctor because of very trying circumstances that occurred just prior, right? In what was it, Caves of Androzani, and so and then you had the working through of these sort of emotional struggles that I think, frankly, the Sixth Doctor had. But I think it worked out fine until we get to right a sort of resolution and working out of things. Trial of a Time Lord and all that. And so it reminds me a lot of Peter Capaldi's arc when he started out really almost angry and mysterious. And what was the first one he did? Deep Breath. And you
I think
didn't
so.
know
Yeah.
it, right? And you didn't know if he was like a good guy and he what is it? What he asked, it was like the famous tagline in one of the episodes. He asked Clara, or Clara, excuse me. He asks her, am I a good man? And she says, oh, I don't know, and then that was the thing. And so, but I thought the parallels between him and Colin Baker were really quite great.
I'm
Um,
glad you mentioned that because that's actually something that that's always been on my mind. Is that Peter Capaldi finally got to do the arc that Colin Baker started, um, and it's so genius. I mean, like when he does it, um, I think though that they did rein Peter Capaldi in, unfortunately, because he's very dark, and then all of a sudden he's got the longer hair, and he's got the guitar, which is him anyway, because he's a musician too. Uh, but Capaldi, I'll put it this way: Tom Baker was my first doctor, my favorite doctor. As in I can see him being an alien and actually coming and being the doctor. Uh, Peter Capaldi's the best actor that ever played Doctor Who. Like, yeah, like they're all like they're fantastic actors and that's played Doctor Who, but Peter Capaldi has got the acting chops, and it shows. And they do this one with the inversion, the Zygon inversion, where he does this speech, and it's an epic speech. I think every person that's ever played Doctor Who looks at that speech and says, "I wish I would have done that speech." And the latest Doctor, Jodie, uh, she too is quirky and alien in a way that Tom Baker in real life was quirky and alien, and she is quirky and alien in real life too. So if down the road, Tom Baker and Jodie Whittaker flew up in spaceships and said, but so guess what? We're really aliens after all. Not a surprise, uh, because of their personalities. Wouldn't be surprised.
that is very interesting. You know, uh, I'm I remember when I first moved to the United Kingdom as a kid because of my father's job. And I remember turning on the TV. There were four channels on the broadcast TV: BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, and then Channel Four, and then that was it. And but I remember switching to one of the channels, and it was Doctor Who, and it was Sylvester McCoy.
Ah,
And yeah, so it was Sylvester McCoy, and it was so Sylvester McCoy is sort of my doctor in a way, because that was the first my first introduction to Doctor Who. But then after that, I watched the VHS tapes, because they had the VHS tapes of the various serials in the UK, and so I could watch them. I couldn't get all of them, unfortunately, but I was able to watch a lot of them Patrick Troughton, I really liked the Second Doctor, and then I'm a big fan of the Fifth Doctor, and it's probably one of the most famous ones too. But I love the Caves of Androzani. I think that's one of the most beautifully constructed works of art on TV. An amazing work that is just epic, and it just goes on and on and on. And the ramifications of that, we were talking about Colin Baker, the ramifications of that carry throughout the entire series and directly into the Sixth Doctor's reign. But oh gosh, I'm so happy to hear that you're a Doctor Who. Do you have all the Doctor Who the physical media?
Not all. I've got a bunch of them, and I got some here that have been that are autographed from like people like Verdi, and Tom Baker, and Sylvester McCoy, people like that, and Ace. But I got, and of course, I'm guessing you're picking up those Blu-ray sets as they come out, right?
No, I have to. That's one of the things that's one of my great regrets. But you mentioned much earlier about having to draw a line between and it not have, and that was unfortunately one of the lines that I had to draw, because I knew that if I didn't draw that line, I would just be going into a new place of collecting that I don't think I would be able to get out of. And but I have just a small number. I have like Tomb of the Cybermen on DVD, or what is it? Gosh, I have Caves of Anders on. I just have just a spare few. That's all. But I've seen everything. But I haven't seen. I actually, to be perfectly honest, I haven't seen any of the new Doctor, Jodie Whittaker's Doctor. Unfortunately, I just haven't been able to catch the episodes. So I've pretty much not seen everything, and I haven't seen a number of Peter Capaldi's final season, unfortunately. So I was all the way up to the Rachel Talalay directed ones. The final ones with Clara, Heaven's Hellbent and Heaven Sent. I always forget which one goes first. Which one is which one? It was like the 2-part finale. Which one is it's Hellbent and Heaven Sent. I always get them mixed up.
Yeah.
It's and then right, and then there's the whole thing about the hybrid. What's the secret of the hybrid, and Clara and the Doctor, and all the secrets there, and so it's and I was so glad. I think that was Rachel Talalay's. Was that Rachel Talalay's first directing stint at Doctor Who?
I think she did a little bit before.
Did she?
It's kind of comical because Rachel Talalay, started in New Line, and worked and then directed the worst.
Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare.
Yeah, and I was like, she's a horrible director. Freddy's Dead is a horrible film, and then now she does these amazing Doctor Who episodes. Yes. So you never know what's going to happen, right?
Yes, and right. Although, to borrow a line from Freddy's Dead, I'm sure she'll say something like, "Sticks and what does he say? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but nothing will ever kill me." Right, and then that's the speech that begins the speech in the locker room between Freddy Krueger and Yaphet Kotto, right, in that film Freddy's Dead. That Yaphet Kotto. Wow, what was his character's name in that film? Doc. His name was Doc. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was an amazing. That was such an amazing that was an amazing jump between Nightmare on Elm Street 5. The end of Nightmare on Elm Street 5, and then the beginning of Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. I was like, what's going on? What did I miss during this whole, this period between the 5th film and the 6th film? It was amazing. Yeah.
Especially the tone of the film. I mean, 5 is one of the darkest, tones out of all of them. And then you get to part 6, and you see Freddy Krueger, and he's, flying on a broomstick, and you're like, what? Oh, okay. It's it's a Wizard of Oz reference.
Wizard of Oz, Twin Peaks, Roseanne and Tom Arnold were in there. Yeah. And there was Nintendo, the Power Glove.
Johnny
And
Depp.
you remember that? And then now I'm playing with power. Um, I thought the right it was although I must admit I think the and I guess I'm going to have to spoil Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare for anyone who hasn't seen it, but I thought the most effective part of that film was what was it? Was Carlos, right? That was the name of the first person who died with the hearing aid
Oh yeah, that was
and the chalk. I'm not the chalk, but the nails on the chalkboard there, and it just suddenly his that was really frightening to me. But yeah, everything else there, and that was part of the trend where they tried to introduce like a backstory, like retroactively,
Alice Cooper.
retrofit. Yeah, yes, and Lisa Zane, right,
This is-
was the main star, right, and that whole thing with that was also in 3D. I don't. Did you see that in 3D when it came out?
Yeah, like you go in and you get like the glasses
Yes.
with them there. It was okay 3D. Like it wasn't like the best when it came to like 3D wise. It was all right. It's only like a few minutes of the movie.
And that was where they introduced the what was it? The concept of the dream demons, right? The
Yeah.
whole thing was where like Freddy was in the boiler room and he was about to be burned alive, but then all the way up to now we realized that it was some kind of supernatural sinister force that brought him to the state that he was in the nightmare world. But no, it wasn't that. It was these puppet flying dream demons that suddenly were talking to him out of nowhere. Yeah, and that's the whole thing. It reminds me also of Jason Goes to Hell: The Final Friday. Although I think the concept in Jason Goes to Hell: The Final Friday, I think was for me, for my money, I thought it was much more organically in tune, shall we say, with the zombie as Jason
It was
storyline.
fleshed
I
out
thought
more for sure.
I felt that way too. Yeah, yeah.
Like it was
But
still like I say, like I still the first five with like I love real life Jason. I find that they kind of like water him down when they make him like there's only so much you can do with the zombie Jason before you get into comedic territory.
yes.
Um, and it's not scary anymore.
Oh yes, and there's a lot more like it's a lot to do with the makeup effects as well. I remember, I think you mentioned the first Friday. I'm gonna have to spoil it. I mean we've gone this far, but I
Yeah.
have to say this to you during this, and I'll put a spoiler tag somewhere. But in Friday the 13th, the final chapter, one of the most, I think it's the most one of the most brilliant moments in the film is the hitchhiker and the banana. I think that's the most like wildly absurdist, out of nowhere moments that goes like that, and it's the perfect encapsulation of the Friday mythos. You have this woman who didn't do anything. I guess she didn't do anything wrong at first, but then she kind of turned angry when they didn't pick her up, and she has the banana and she's eating, and maybe you think maybe oh it's she's eating, maybe that's her sin, I don't know, but she's eating healthy, she's eating a banana, it's not like junk food or anything like that, and she's just doing her best, she's hungry, and then suddenly bam, the thing through the throat, and then the banana, and it becomes suddenly it becomes a metaphor for the life being sucked
Exactly.
out of her, right, and she's dying, and I thought that was the most absurd like brilliant moment. That's one of my favorite Friday the 13th deaths, by the way, that the girl on the side of the road eating a banana, uh just uh just unbelievable in terms of its schlock brilliance, you know what I mean?
Sometimes simple is best.
Yeah, yeah, and that film too, I was just rewatching it, and I was so amazed at how very little uh I mean, there is a lot of violence of shown, but it's actually uh, pared down and it's edited like almost halfway into the special effect, and so you kind of see the special effect, and then suddenly cuts away to something completely different, and so. And I think it was you mentioned Tom Savini, and I think Tom Savini was mentioning how that was really great because what that meant, and I'm spoiling Friday the 15th, the final chapter, but who cares? Who cares? I'll say it. I'll say it in the description. But it really that meant that when it came time to kill Jason, you could have the camera linger on the machete through the hand, and you could
Oh,
have
it
it
does it
linger
ever.
the whole thing with that in the head, and then it goes through, and you can have it slide down, and the head half kind of it's almost falling apart. And he said also, there are actually moments where you could have him. There's a different death planned, I think, but they had it like this, and so I think the screenwriter or someone was saying on one of the documentaries, "Oh, this was the moment where I realized they're planning a sequel." Right? Even when you have a machete in the head like that, he's still intact, and so they're planning a sequel. It went in a different direction, of course, with Friday 5 and what
I
happened
think that's
there.
where they should have went with the Tommy thing. I'm a big fan of the Tommy Jarvis character, and I think one of the reasons I like Friday 5 so much is John Shepard's portrayal
Yes.
of Tommy Jarvis. Because if you were Corey Feldman and you went through that, you would be John Shepard. You would not be Thom Matthews. Like,
I agree.
love Thom Matthews, but you wouldn't be Thom Matthews. You wouldn't be this cool hunky dude that's like super okay with things, except for like one sequence at the beginning of the film. He's pretty much, he doesn't seem like Tommy Jarvis. But John Shepard seems like exactly what I'd expect would happen.
And it's so brilliant. He suddenly knows martial arts,
Yeah,
and he's just like unhinged. I think quite rightly so, because of the trauma that he has ensued. And what I love is, you mentioned too, is the mystery. You don't know, you're not quite sure what's up with him until like the final, whatever it is, 10 minutes in the rain in the final showdown, right? But you don't quite know what's going on. And so
they kind of pull a full, and there's a spoiler one. You might want to spoil for this one. They
I
pull
will.
like
I will.
switch
Go
on
ahead.
this one.
Yes.
And so you think, okay, Tommy's seeing all this, and when you realize, okay, it's not Tommy, then you're like, okay, so there's going to be this confrontation. The Tommy's going to get rid of his demons, and kill this new fake killer, but he doesn't. He's not the person that does it. It's not him at all. Actually, it's the two other people.
Yeah.
It's Melanie Kinnaman's character,
Yeah.
and of course it's Reggie the Reckless.
Yes.
And it's him like literally becoming like Jason near the end of the film, and that's what was so neat. I mean, like, it's so baffling with part 6. I guess they had to find a way to bring him back, because if you remember in part 5, they do kind of say they cremated Jason. So I guess they had to
the ashtray, right? Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. There was so much promise for that. And I love how you mentioned that scene, because Jason goes to Tommy in the barn, and Tommy's standing there, and you think he's going to confront, but he doesn't. And actually, he gets wounded, right? Yeah. Which is such a surprising moment. And that also reminds me too. I love the moment where I'll mention, Jason gets wounded as he's pursuing Melanie Kinnaman and Reggie right through the rain. And there's a moment where he looks down and he sees he's been actually quite significantly wounded. And he's got the mask on, so you don't know what his reaction is, but I can imagine what he must be thinking. And what he was, oh my goodness, I'm seriously hurt, but I'm just gonna keep on trucking. And I just love those moments that you can imagine what the person behind the mask was thinking. It's a Friday the 13th film, but I love thinking about this sort of stuff. And also, I should mention that the song in Friday the 13th Part 5, which is what is it? Ooh baby, ooh baby.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, demon.
So, yeah, right. Exactly. And so I for whatever reason, I was in my house here, and I was in just maybe in the bathroom or something like that, just washing up or something, and I would just randomly, for whatever reason, that song came into my head. And I just started to sing it. I didn't think of anything. I just said, ooh, baby, ooh, baby, ooh, baby. And my wife was in the house, and she heard me say, what is that song? What is that? And I said, oh, I'm sorry. That was a song from Friday the 13th Part 5. Oh, okay, that's great. Thank you. I don't think she's ever seen the film, but, it's amazing to think, even after all these, after all this time, that something like that can still occupy my thoughts.
Yeah.
I love that song. That's a great film. But oh, I'm okay. So I'm so sorry to keep you. I think we've been talking for so long. I know you're busy. So
That is
let me
fine.
just let me just end with a few more minutes of your time. I apologize, and let me ask you. So my dear friend, Aaron Pynn, the one and only, the great Aaron Pynn. This has been such a pleasure for me. Truly has. And your insights and your enthusiasm for collecting and also for watching the films and just knowing the films and loving the films, I think is something that we all need. And you set a brilliant example for me and for many other people. And so I'm truly honored today that you could take out a, a few hours of your very precious time to talk with me. I really appreciate it, my friend, very much so.
I got to say, one, thank you for having me on here. Two, I was very nervous actually, coming on here because it was you and it was your channel. So yeah, so I actually texted my better half just before I came on, and she said, are you going to do the thing with Daisuke now? And I'm like, yeah. I said, I'm a bit nervous. So he said, no, it'll be okay. But no, it has been a blast. I love watching the channel, and thank you so much for reaching out to me. You made a video previously on my channel, and I woke up that morning and I had like a message from Brian and from Just a Disc, and he said, did you see this? And so he sent me the link, and I hadn't seen it at that point because I just woken up. And thank you so much. That really meant a lot. I had been having a really rough week, and that message, it helped on the channel. Your video, it helped a lot. I mean, like it's been like work can get pretty stressful sometimes.
Sure.
And when I come down here, this is kind of like this is my time to actually just relax. Aside from when I'm actually getting to watch a film. I watched, by the way, if you don't have it, Next to Kin, yes, last night. Brilliantly beautiful Australian film. That with actually John Jarrett. John Jarrett was actually a really good looking dude before Wolf Creek. But definitely check it out if you haven't, because it is a masterful little film. And thank you so much for having me on here. I really, really appreciate it.
No, Aaron, my pleasure, my pleasure. In the final moments, if you don't mind, could you let us know what you have in store without without giving away too much of the family recipe, the secret sauce? Let us know a little bit about what's in store for us on your channel. Any upcoming plans for videos or live streams? Anything
Well, live
that
streams
we can
pretty
look
much.
forward to?
I'll probably be doing more on the Vinegar Syndrome one, because that announcement was pretty big, and I do want to dive more into those films. Obviously, I've stopped myself from watching any Friday the 13th until the box set comes out. I'll be going over those. I'm going to try to do the 31 Days of Horror. I'll just be doing it a little bit differently this time. As if anybody saw my channel before, I did 31 live days of horror, which was insanely hard because it meant I worked an 8-hour day, watched a film, made a live video, and often those videos would be like an hour to 2 hours long sometimes. So yeah, that was at the end of October. I was wrecked, man. I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to be doing some with my dad. I eventually hopefully want to do something with my kids as well, and I'm trying to get work with Jamie Blanks to have him on sometime, actually do a video kind of talking to him about like his work and just talking about like some of the he's a slasher film fan too, so talking about some of the stuff that he likes as well. So a lot of stuff. And of course I have a Patreon channel, and I do exclusive stuff over there, where I work with my better half, and we started a series called I Made My Wife Watch This, where we watch really creepy, cheesy movies. Well, not always creepy. We watched Dr. Jekyll's Dungeon of Death. That was our first review. And we recently did watch Al Adamson's Dracula versus Frankenstein. This was her first time seeing it. So she's got a lot to say on that. And I'm going to do a series of versus videos where I'm going to put company against company and give my thoughts on each of them. And will also be for people that maybe have dropped into the streaming thing. I'm going to be reviewing the different streaming services as well eventually down the road.
Oh, that is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. You know, you mentioned the streaming services, and I realized I was meaning to ask you about streaming services, but unfortunately, I got carried away with our your wonderful. It was a beautiful conversation. So we'll have to leave it for another day. So would it be okay? Would you be willing and open to coming back and continuing our conversation?
100%. I had a blast. So yes, I would love to.
Oh, thank my dear friend. Let's continue the conversation. I will remember to ask you about streaming services, right? One of the things that's very important now is in even in collecting is streaming, and what it means for collecting, and how it has affected or not affected, as the case may be, physical media collecting, at least for the time being. So I really want to get your thoughts on that. I'll wait for your videos, of course, and then and maybe alongside that or after that we can talk here. So I'd love to talk with you again on this channel, if that's okay with you, my friend.
I'm 100% down with it.
So
Thank you.
thank you. Thank Aaron. My pleasure. As I say, you are one of my heroes. You continue to be one of my heroes. You set a wonderful example. I wish I knew 1/10 of 1.001% of what you know. I mean that. I wish I knew even the littlest amount of what you know, which is immense. And I hope that people who have been watching this can get a sense of this, because you are one of the most intelligent, enthusiastic, down to earth, and one of the friendliest people that I've had the great pleasure of knowing. So thank you very much. Or maybe let me just put it this way. Thank you, Aaron Pynn, or you, Aaron Pynn. Thank you very much, my friend. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
For me as well.
All right. Thank you. We'll talk soon. And cheers, my friend.